Could you first of all present yourself?
Yeah, my name is Ian Scoones. I work at the Institute of Development Studies at the University of Sussex, and I'm a researcher working on land and agricultural issues in Africa, particularly in Zimbabwe.
Thank you very much. What prompted you to go and research on land reform in Zimbabwe and write a book about it?
Well, the land reform in Zimbabwe, as you know, started in 2000, and I've been researching on rural issues in Zimbabwe for the last 25 years. And here was a rapid and radical change in agricultural and agrarian systems in the country, which we really needed to find out what was happening. And we asked a very simple question at the beginning of our research. What happened to people's livelihoods when they got land? Now, of course, a simple question, when you get to the details of it, is actually very difficult to answer. And we studied across one of the provinces in Zimbabwe, Masvingo province, in detail what happened to people's livelihoods over the last 10 years. And what we found was often very, very surprising, often unexpected results. We found that people were doing remarkably well. People were accumulating, investing in agriculture, building houses, getting things going. Very different to the media positions that we often heard, certainly in Britain, in this country, but also more broadly in Zimbabwe. So, as researchers, it was a really fascinating time to really explore the complexities of what was happening on the ground.
If we understand, if the land reform in Zimbabwe is not the main cause of what is happening now in the country, in terms of the misery and so on, the economic collapse of the country, what is the cause, in your view?
Well, Zimbabwe's been through a major transition, unquestionably, and a huge political and economic upheaval in the last 10 years. Consequence of withdrawal of capital, consequence of lack of withdrawal of donor support and other things, and a consequence of the political tensions that have existed in the country. All of that has affected the economy. The transition in the land sector, the agricultural sector, has also affected certain crops, certain commodities. What our study finds is not all good news. There are successes and there are also failures. What we're trying to present in our book is a balanced picture. But what we see, particularly following the formation of the Government of National Unity and the stabilization of the economy through dollarization and the reduction of the debilitating hyperinflation that existed for much of the last decade, is a growth of the economy. Now, what we've also pointed out in our book is that actually, while the formal economy has collapsed in many respects and all the indicators are down, actually the informal economy, the economy on which most people live, is thriving and getting going. So if we have a more rounded picture, the collapse of Zimbabwe has to be balanced against this more positive view, particularly the growth of the informal sector and the way that people are selling crops, livestock, and trading in ways that is not captured by standard national statistics.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nice to speak to you.
Thank you. Bye for now. Thank you for accepting to give us an interview, sir. My name is Zinda. I am the editor-in-chief for Shout Africa. Could you present yourself?
I'm Robin Palmer. I'm now retired. I was a student at the university in what was then Salisbury, Southern Rhodesia, back in the early 1960s. I started a PhD on the politics of land in Rhodesia. I was deported by the Smith regime just after UDI. I published a book based on that thesis called Land and Racial Domination in Rhodesia in 1977. Then I worked as an academic for a time, and then I worked for Oxfam as a development worker for a time. I worked latterly as a land policy advisor for them, and in that capacity I spent quite a lot of time over the last 8 or 9 years going to Zimbabwe and being a kind of advisor to researchers doing work on what was happening in some of the new resettlement areas as a result of the land reform program.
Thank you, thank you. I understand that if we look back at the presentation, it seems land reform in Zimbabwe was not as bad as people try to portray it in the UK. Now, if that is not the cause of what is happening today in Zimbabwe, I mean the total collapse of the economic system there, what do you think is the cause?
Well, I think Zimbabwe has had a disastrous decade economically, clearly. I was there at times when people were queuing for hours to get a little bit of money out of the bank, and they had to go there every day to do that. You couldn't plan with any degree of certainty anything. Each day you had to have a new plan to survive. Many people left to the diaspora, South Africa, here and so forth. So you had a completely an appalling decade economically. And in that context, any kind of land reform program was going to struggle because there weren't the resources that you need to support a program of that kind. So I think essentially one takes it back to virtual economic collapse, and depending on your political position, you blame that on certain people. But clearly the economy has been very badly mismanaged, and the new government of national unity is struggling to stabilise things.
Okay, if I were to say that land reform is not the cause of what Zimbabwe is going through today, it could be the embargo from the West which is causing all the misery.
Yeah.
Will I be correct in saying that?
It's an argument that Mugabe and his colleagues often make, that sanctions, all our problems are the result of sanctions. The sanctions, in fact, are against individuals rather than governments.
Is sanction not stopping people to go and invest, for instance? People from abroad to go there and invest?
I think there is a genuine concern about, which I share, about donors and getting donors engaged. For example, when I worked with Oxfam, I tried to encourage them to spend some of their resources in the new resettlement areas on the grounds that these are new societies being created. These are people worthy of support. Yes, the land reform program was highly politicised, but it's a nonsense that you only give support in one area and not in another. Now, that hasn't happened. The donors don't do that. I think it's a great mistake. I think that it would be an enormous benefit if people crossed that border, that boundary, if you like. I can understand why it's difficult, but I think they should do that. They should have the courage to do that.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi, this is Justin reporting from Central London. I'm reporting from SOAS, which is the School of Oriental and African Studies. Today, as you can see, we have been discussing land reform in Zimbabwe. It seems that, according to the book which has been just published, land reform is not what is causing misery in Zimbabwe. So if that is not the problem Zimbabwe is facing today, land reform, what is the cause of the misery in Zimbabwe? I'll leave that question to you. Just reporting. Thank you.